Hey everybody, welcome back to the workshop. It's no secret that I like strange airplanes, and this one that I have today is a real doozy. This is the FV31 Cypher from Flex Innovations. I guess you could say it's part quadcopter and part flying wing, and that combination gives this model flight capabilities that are both unusual and spectacular to see. So stick around and I'll tell you all about it. The FV31 has a foam airframe that is mostly pre-built at the factory. It comes pre-painted and all of the decals are applied as well. It is also available in a red, white, and blue trim scheme if you don't care for the gray camouflage. Most of the electronics are already included in the airframe, but you will have to add 2 items. The first of those is a 3-cell LiPo battery. There's a pretty wide range of batteries that you can use, but I've got the recommended battery, which has a 3500 mAh capacity and a discharge rate of 75C. The other thing you'll need to add is an S-Bus style receiver. Again, there are a lot of different receivers that would work here, but I've gone with the recommended unit. In this case, is a Spectrum SPM 4649T. As you can see, the Cypher is powered by 4 ducted fans. The 2 fans in the front are permanently fixed to only provide vertical thrust. However, the 2 fans on the rear can be tilted to change their thrust angle. And it is these 2 tilting fans that are the key to the Cypher's incredibly wide performance envelope. The rear fans can be moved to 3 different positions on the fly. When they're configured horizontally like this, they provide vertical thrust just like the front fans. In this configuration, the FV31 is essentially a quadcopter that can take off and land vertically. The wings and elevons contribute nothing here. All of the lift and control comes from the 4 fan units working in unison. If you tilt the fan units 90 degrees, they now provide purely horizontal thrust, and in this way the FV31 essentially becomes a conventional flying wing. All of the lift comes from the wing, and the elevons provide pitch and roll control. However, the fan units still work together to give you yaw control. The third tilt option is where things get really interesting. With the fans set at a 45-degree angle, they provide equal amounts of forward thrust and lift. And in this configuration, the FV31 really blurs the lines between quadcopter and fixed-wing airplane. And I think you'll see what I mean when I show you the flight footage. The heart of the FV31 is this green circuit board in the nose. This is a flight controller, which is basically a series of gyros and processors that stabilize the model through all phases of flight. And as you're assembling the Cypher, you'll need to configure this flight controller to your specific setup. And that's done through free interface software called Betaflight. You can connect the flight controller to your computer either by hardwiring it with a USB cable or using the included Bluetooth adapter. Those of you who have set up a multi-rotor before already know what I'm talking about. For the rest of you, there is a little bit of a learning curve involved, but you'll be fine as long as you follow the instructions and you're reasonably computer literate. Physical assembly of the FV31 did not cause any problems, but there were 3 areas where I made small tweaks. The first is that I moved the battery leads from the port side to the starboard side to improve accessibility. And this was easily done by removing this plastic tray, and it's just held in with 4 screws. Another thing, the wheels did not spin freely on the axles, so I carefully drilled out the hubs with a 1/8 inch drill bit. They work much better now. The last thing is that the fan tilt mechanism was rubbing against the inside surface of this foam shroud. I was able to correct that by reversing the screw on the servo's ball link. Now it's time to talk about how the Cypher flies, and that really breaks down into a few subcategories depending on the tilt position of the rear fans. When the rear fans are positioned to provide vertical thrust, this model flies just like a multi-rotor. It can take off and land vertically, and it will also translate forward, backwards, and side to side, just like any other multi-rotor. Those of you who have multi-rotor stick experience will transition to this model with no problem. Those of you who have never flown a multi-rotor before, I would recommend that you get your feet wet either with a computer simulator or an inexpensive microquad such as this Blade Inductrix. The control inputs and response are the same between these two, but there's much less risk when you make a mistake with this little guy. With the rear fans positioned to provide forward thrust, the FV31 performs like a conventional sport plane. It will do rolling takeoffs and conventional landings. It is also capable of a wide range of basic aerobatics, such as loops and rolls and inverted flight. I think this mode is where most of us will be most comfortable and most familiar. If you're like me, it will take a little bit of flight time to get used to flying the FV31 with the fans at a 45-degree angle. Flex Innovations calls this the magic configuration, and I understand why. It's a little bit like a multi-rotor and also a little bit like a fixed-wing airplane. It can take off with zero ground roll, and it's capable of a respectable forward speed. At the same time, it can also fly backwards, and it's capable of a few different aerobatic moves. There's a lot to explore here, but the biggest hurdle is just wrapping your head around all of the different possibilities. Once you've become comfortable flying the Cypher in each of the different fan configurations, then you can begin to transition between these configurations on the fly, and that's when things get really interesting. For instance, you can take off vertically and hover above the runway, then flip the switch to tilt the fans and zoom around the field doing low inverted passes, loops, rolls, or whatever, then finish the flight with a vertical landing at your feet. And as you get even more comfortable, you can begin to do these transitions in the middle of maneuvers to make the Cypher do even more incredible things. I'm not there yet, but I'm working on it. I've been very conservative so far by keeping my flight times between 3 and 4 minutes, and that gives me a comfortable reserve when it's time to land. I'm sure there's some headroom to expand that a little bit, but I'm pushing the boundaries very slowly. With most of the models that I review, I feel like I get the general gist of their flight capabilities within the first half dozen or so flights. That is definitely not the case with the FV31. I've been flying it for more than a month, and I feel like I'm still just scratching the surface not only of what it can do, but my own skills and comfort level in making those things happen. I think this airplane and I will be getting acquainted for a long time. Now, there's no sugarcoating the fact that this is a complex model. With the 4 fan units, the tilt mechanism, and the flight controller, this is not your average Sunday flyer. But for those of us who are willing to manage those extra bits, the FV31 offers some extraordinary capabilities. Let's close things out with a little bit more flight footage. I also encourage you to check out my written review of the Flex Innovations FV31 Cypher in Model Aviation magazine. Thanks for watching.